Good evening. Tonight, we enter a world far from comfort, a world of sand, steel, and sorrow. We are diving deep into what life was truly like under the shadow of the Roman Colosseum. Forget the heroic champion the movies sold you. The truth is, you probably wouldn't last a single day. So, before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely find value in these journeys into the past. And do let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It is always a privilege to know who is joining us from around the world. Now, find a comfortable position, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's chronicle together. Close your eyes for a moment and let the noise of your world fade away. In the theatre of your mind, let an image form. See before you the Flavian amphitheatre, a structure so colossal, so perfect in its geometry, it seems to hold the sky itself. The sun beats down on 80,000 spectators, a roaring ocean of humanity. Their faces turn to the sand-covered floor of the arena below. This is the heart of Rome, the center of the world, and you are about to witness the gods of the games. Listen to the roar of the crowd as the procession begins. The Pompa. It is a parade of demigods. The men enter the arena, their bodies sculpted from marble, their skin oiled and gleaming. You see the Murmillo, his polished bronze helmet shaped like a fish, his large rectangular shield a wall of impenetrable defense. You see the Thraex, his curved sword a thing of deadly beauty. And you see the Retiarius, the net man, moving with a dancer's grace, his trident flashing in the sun, his bare chest a testament to his courage. Their armor is not just for protection, it is a work of art, designed to captivate and intimidate. Their movements are not those of desperate slaves, but of professional athletes, masters of their craft. They walk with a confident swagger, acknowledging the cheers of the crowd, their expressions hidden behind the grim visage of their helmets. They are the living embodiment of Roman martial virtue, strength, discipline, and a calm acceptance of fate. Now, picture the duel itself. A gate opens, and two of these titans step onto the hot sand. There is a hush. The two men circle each other, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. This is not a chaotic brawl. It is a lethal chess match. Every feint, every parry, every step is a calculated move. A flash of steel, the clang of a sword against a shield, the gasp of the crowd as one man narrowly avoids a trident's cast. It is a spectacle of skill, a ballet of violence. The crowd is not a mindless mob. They are connoisseurs. They understand the intricacies of the fight. They cheer for a clever maneuver. They praise a display of incredible stamina. They are watching more than a fight. They are watching a story unfold, a drama of courage against the odds. And when one man finally falls, wounded but not dead, he looks to the crowd, to the editor of the games. He has fought bravely. He has given them a magnificent show. And the crowd, in their wisdom and mercy, responds. Thumbs are turned up. A life is spared. The victor stands, his arm raised not in savage triumph, but in quiet, dignified acknowledgement of his victory. He has earned his glory. He is a hero. His name will be chanted by the thousands, his likeness scratched as graffiti on the city walls. He is an object of desire for noble women, an idol for the boys of Rome, a symbol of everything it means to be strong, to be brave, to be Roman. This is the image we have been sold. A world of heroic combat, of fame earned through courage, of a life lived at the very peak of intensity. It is an image of profound beauty, of strength, of control. This is the image we worship. It is a beautiful, seductive, and powerful lie. Now, take that pristine image, the gleaming hero, the adoring crowd, the honorable jewel, and hold it in your mind. Feel its power, its glory, and now cast it into the fire. Watch the gleaming armor melt away, revealing not the body of a demigod, but the branded flesh of a slave. Watch the noble Colosseum, the stage for heroes, transform into what it truly was, a state-sponsored abattoir, a consecrated altar of death, its sands raked constantly to soak up the blood and viscera of the men who had died there just moments before. That magnificent, sculpted body you pictured? Erase it. See instead a man fed on a monotonous gruel of wet barley and beans. A diet designed not for peak athletic performance, but to create a layer of fat over the muscle. This was a deliberate cruelty. A fatter gladiator could sustain more surface-level cuts, bleeding spectacularly for the crowd's delight, without the inconvenience of dying too quickly. His body was not a temple. It was a stage prop for a bloody spectacle. The honorable duel between two masters, a fiction. For every one-on-one contest of skill, there were a dozen other forms of butchery. See the terrified Noxii, the condemned criminals, pushed into the arena with no armor and a rusty sword, forced to kill each other in a chaotic, clumsy melee for the lunchtime entertainment. See the bestiarii, the beast hunters, who were often little more than human bait, armed with a spear against a starving lion or a bear. Their screams of terror are part of the show. The adoring connoisseur crowd, see them now for what they were. A fickle mob, drunk on bloodlust. Their cheers were not for the man, but for the wound. Their judgment of life or death was not based on honor, but on a whim, on whether they had been sufficiently entertained. And when a life was not spared, when the thumb was turned down, you must imagine the grim finality. The victor, his own body screaming in agony, forced to drive his sword into the throat of the man he had just defeated, a man who may have been his only friend in the barracks. And that hero, his name chanted by thousands, a fantasy reserved for a tiny few. The vast majority of gladiators were anonymous. They were the nameless Gauls, Dacians, and Germans, ripped from their homes, their families slaughtered, their names erased. They were forced to fight under a new stage name, a cruel mockery of the life that had been stolen from them. They did not fight for glory. They fought because a man with a whip stood at the gate. They fought out of pure animal terror. Their final moments were not ones of noble acceptance, but of desperate, lonely fear. This was the true world of the gladiator. And to understand its depths, we must leave the imaginary roar of the Colosseum and follow the fate of one such man. A man once called Marcus, a free farmer from Gaul who loved his land and his family. A man who is now known only as Scaeva, the left-handed, bought for 800 denarii from a slave trader, destined to bleed for the entertainment of thousands. His story begins not with a choice, but with a cage. And his journey is not one of glory, but of survival in a world that saw him as nothing more than a thing, an object born to die for the amusement of others. The journey into the cage begins long before the gates of the Ludus ever swing shut. It begins with an ending. The end of a battle, the end of a trial, the end of a life. The men who would become gladiators were not born. They were made, forged in the fires of conquest and condemnation. They were the human refuse of a triumphant empire, the living spoils of war and the condemned refuse of its justice system, swept from the corners of the world and funneled into the insatiable maw of the arena. Let us first stand on a battlefield in northern Gaul, a place of damp forests and mist-shrouded hills. The fight is over. A Roman legion, a relentless machine of iron and discipline, has crushed a tribal uprising. The air, once filled with the defiant shouts of warriors and the clang of steel, is now heavy with the silence of defeat and the smell of blood. This is where the story of our man, Marcus, ends, and the story of the commodity, Scaeva, begins. He lies wounded, his crude shield shattered, his leg pierced by a Roman javelin. He is not a soldier by trade. He is a farmer who was called to defend his home. He thinks of the smell of the earth after a rain, of the weight of his child in his arms, of the warmth of his wife beside him at night. These memories are all he has left. He watches as the legionaries move through the field of bodies, their movements efficient and without emotion. They are not here to offer aid. They are here to collect the harvest. He and the other survivors are rounded up. Their hands are bound tightly with rough leather cords, a bite of humiliation that is sharper than any wound. They are chained together, a long, shuffling line of defeated men, and forced to march. They are now prisoners of war, captivi. Their identities have been stripped away. They are no longer fathers, husbands, or sons. They are spoils, a walking testament to Roman victory, their value now measured only in their physical strength and their capacity to endure further suffering. For Marcus, the world has shrunk to the dusty boots of the soldier in front of him and the cold, heavy weight of the chain on his wrists. The road ahead leads south, towards the heart of the empire that has just devoured his world. But not all gladiators were forged in the heat of battle. Many were created in the cold, sterile halls of Roman justice. Imagine a courtroom in a bustling provincial city. A man stands before a magistrate, accused of a crime, brigandage, murder, or perhaps something as simple as rebellion against Roman rule. There is no jury of his peers, no lengthy process of appeal. The evidence is presented. The verdict is swift. He is found guilty. His sentence is not a quiet death in a cell. He is condemned ad ludum, to the games. This is considered one of the lowest and most dishonorable forms of capital punishment. It is a sentence of death, but a death that will be drawn out, monetized, and turned into a public spectacle for the amusement of the masses. He will be handed over to a Lanista, his life no longer his own, his death now a scheduled performance. He is a damnatus, a condemned man whose only remaining purpose on earth is to bleed for the entertainment of others. And finally, there is a third path into this living hell, one born not of war or crime, but of simple, wretched misfortune. Picture a sprawling estate in the Italian countryside. A wealthy nobleman has fallen on hard times, his debts mounting. He looks for assets to liquidate. He does not look to his statues or his villas, he looks to his slaves. Among them is a strong, belligerent Thracian who has caused trouble in the past. He is too strong to be a field hand, too unruly to be a domestic servant. But his strength and aggression, once a liability, are now a marketable asset. The master makes a call. A Lanista is summoned. The slave is sold, not for a crime he has committed, but simply because his master sees more profit in his potential death than in his continued life. These are the three great rivers of human misery that flowed into the arena: the captive, the criminal, and the slave. Each man arrives by a different path, his heart filled with a different kind of loss: the loss of a nation, the loss of freedom, the loss of any semblance of a normal life. But their destinations are all the same. They are all heading to the flesh market, where their bodies will be appraised, their spirits broken, and their humanity given a price tag. For Marcus the Gaul, the long, painful march is about to end, and a new, more profound agony is about to begin. The journey for Marcus and the other captives ends in a place that is both a marketplace and a nightmare. It is a slave auction, held in the open square of a southern Italian port town. But these are not domestic slaves or field hands being sold. This is a specialized trade. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, fear, and the metallic tang of old blood. The customers here are not wealthy matrons looking for a new cook. They are the Lanista, the owners and brokers of gladiators, men with hard eyes and even harder hearts. The captives are stripped naked, their wounds still fresh, and pushed onto a raised wooden platform. This is the ultimate degradation. They stand exposed under the harsh glare of the sun, their bodies now mere objects for appraisal. The Lanista walk around the platform, their expressions a mixture of a butcher assessing cattle and a collector examining antiques. They are looking for specific qualities: a broad chest that can take a blow, strong legs for balance, a long reach. They look for youth and a spark of aggression in the eyes. Imagine Marcus standing there, shivering not from cold, but from a humiliation so profound it feels like a physical blow. A portly Lanista, his fingers dripping with oil from his morning meal, approaches him. The man grabs Marcus's face, forcing his jaw open to inspect his teeth, a gesture one uses for a horse. He runs a hand over the muscles of Marcus's arms and shoulders, prodding and pinching. He examines the javelin wound in his leg, not with medical concern, but to assess if it will permanently hinder his movement. Every touch is a violation, a reminder that he is no longer a person, but a piece of flesh to be purchased. He is a thing. The bidding begins. The auctioneer cries out the qualities of the men: a strong Gaul, a fierce German, as if listing the features of a piece of furniture. The Lanista call out their bids in denarii, the currency of the empire that has just destroyed his life. Marcus hears the numbers rising: 500 denarii, 600, 700. He feels a strange, detached horror. He is watching his own soul being sold. The price is not for his life, but for the right to profit from his death. Finally, the bidding stops. A sharp rap of a wooden gavel seals his fate. He has been sold for 800 denarii to a short, powerfully built man with a network of scars on his face. This is his new master. He is pulled from the platform and shoved into a pen with the other purchased men. The transaction is not yet complete. There is one final, terrible ritual to endure, the act that will forever erase his past and seal his new identity. This is the moment of the brand. He is held down by two of the Lanista's assistants. A small brazier glows nearby, heating a long iron rod until its tip shimmers with a malevolent orange heat. The Lanista takes the iron. He examines his new property, looking for a place on the body, the shoulder, the thigh, the arm, where the mark of ownership will be clear and undeniable. For a moment, there is only the sound of the crackling coals and Marcus's own ragged breathing. Then the iron is pressed against his skin. The pain is a universe unto itself. It is not the clean, sharp pain of a sword, but a deep, searing, sizzling agony that seems to burn its way into his very soul. The smell of his own burning flesh fills his nostrils. A scream is torn from his throat, a raw animal sound that is a mixture of agony and despair. It is over in a few seconds, but the moment stretches into an eternity. When the iron is pulled away, it leaves behind a dark, weeping wound in the shape of his new master's insignia. The wound will eventually heal into a thick, ugly scar, a permanent, indelible declaration to the world. It says, "I am not my own. I belong to another. I am a gladiator." And with the brand comes the loss of his name. Marcus is gone forever, burned away with his past life. The Lanista, who favors short, sharp names for his fighters, looks at the defiant, left-handed way the Gaul held his ground on the platform. He grunts a single word: Scaeva. The left-handed. It is not a name, it is a label, a description of a useful trait. This is the birth of a gladiator, not in the cheering arena, but here in the filth and despair of a slave market. It is a birth marked by the loss of freedom, the loss of identity, and the searing, unforgettable pain of the brand. Scaeva, the man who was once Marcus has been officially welcomed into his new family, the familiar Gladiatoria, and he is about to learn that this family's home is a prison, and its only currency is pain. Scaeva and the other newly branded men are chained once more and march to their new home. It is not a barracks or a training camp. It is a fortress. This is the Ludus, the gladiator school, and from the moment he sees its high, windowless walls, its heavy barred gates, and the armed guards patrolling its perimeter, Scaeva understands that he has not been brought here to learn a trade. He has been brought here to be incarcerated. The gates creak open, and he is shoved inside. The world he knew, the world of open sky and green fields, vanishes. He is now in a large, central courtyard, the ground hard-packed and stained with sweat. Around the yard are the buildings that will define his existence: the armory, the infirmary, and the long, low-slung building that will be his home. The cells. He is led to this building and assigned his space. It is not a room. It is a stone box, perhaps 6 feet long and 4 feet wide, barely large enough to lie down in. There is no bed, only a thin layer of straw on the floor, crawling with fleas. A single, small, grated opening high in the wall offers a sliver of light, but no view of the outside world. The air is cold, damp, and thick with the smell of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, and human waste. This tiny, grim space will be his only sanctuary, the only place he will be allowed a moment of solitude. The door is not wood. It is a heavy iron grate, locked from the outside. He is a prisoner, and his every moment will be lived under the watchful eye of his jailers. The absolute ruler of this private kingdom is the Lanista. Scaeva sees him now, not as the calculating merchant from the market, but as the master of this domain. He walks the yard with an air of total authority, his presence radiating a quiet menace. His word is law, his whim is fate. He holds the power of life and death over every man within these walls. He can order a beating for a minor infraction, sell a man to a distant province, or condemn him to a fight he knows is unwinnable. The gladiators are his property, his investment, and he will manage them with a cold, ruthless efficiency. His enforcers are the doctores, the trainers. These are often former gladiators themselves, men who survived their time in the arena, perhaps even earning their freedom with the symbolic wooden sword, the rudis. But their survival has not made them compassionate. It has made them hard and cruel. They are the ones who understand the brutal mechanics of this world, and their job is to beat that understanding into the new recruits. They carry whips, not as symbols of authority, but as tools of instruction, ready to be used at the slightest sign of hesitation, disobedience, or weakness. Scaeva soon learns the relentless, grinding routine of this new life. The day begins before dawn, with the harsh clang of a bell. The cell gates are unlocked, and the men are herded into the courtyard for the morning meal. There are no tables, no pleasantries. A bowl is shoved into their hands, and a ladle of greyish thick porridge is slopped into it. This is Sagina, the gladiator's mash. It is a bland, joyless concoction of boiled barley, beans, and whatever other cheap grains are available, sometimes mixed with ash to add minerals. It is low in fat, high in carbohydrates, designed for one purpose: to build bulk and sustain a man through hours of grueling physical exertion. It is not food, it is fuel. And Scaeva learns to eat it quickly, without complaint, because it is the only fuel he will get. The days are long and brutal, but the nights are a different kind of hell. Locked in his cell, Scaeva is left alone with his thoughts. In the darkness, the sounds of the Ludus become amplified. He hears the groans of men nursing fresh injuries from the day's training. He hears the quiet, desperate weeping of a young recruit, a boy overwhelmed by fear and hopelessness. He hears the guards walking their rounds, their footsteps a constant reminder of his captivity. And in the silence between these sounds, he is haunted by the ghosts of his past life. He sees his wife's face. He hears his child's laughter. These memories, once a source of comfort, are now a form of torture, a reminder of everything that has been violently stolen from him. He learns that the Ludus is not just a physical prison, it is a psychological one. It is a place designed to systematically dismantle a man, to strip him of his past, his hope, and his very name. It is designed to break his spirit so completely that he will accept the unthinkable as his new reality. He must learn to stop being Marcus, the farmer from Gaul. He must learn to forget the feel of the sun on his face and the love of his family. He must become Scaeva, the prisoner, the fighter, the branded body. His survival depends on it. The breaking of the spirit is followed by the remaking of the body. Once the initial shock of captivity settles into a dull, permanent ache, the true work of the Ludus begins. The courtyard, once a symbol of his imprisonment, now becomes his workshop, his forge, and his crucible. Here, day after grueling day, his body will be hammered and hardened, his muscles trained to forget the gentle rhythms of farming and learn the brutal cadence of killing. This is the education of a gladiator, a curriculum written in sweat and delivered through pain. The morning begins not with a lesson in tactics, but with a raw test of endurance. Under the watchful, unforgiving eyes of a doctor, Scaeva and the other novices are put through hours of punishing physical conditioning. They run endless laps around the yard, their bare feet pounding the hard earth. They lift heavy stones, their backs straining, their muscles screaming in protest. They are forced into grueling calisthenics, their bodies pushed to the absolute limit of exhaustion and then pushed further still. Any man who falters, who stumbles, who even slows his pace, is met with the sharp, stinging kiss of the trainer's whip, a fiery reminder that his body's limits are not for him to decide. After this ordeal comes the core of his new trade, weapons training, but he is not handed the gleaming, sharpened steel of the arena. That is a privilege he has not yet earned. His first sword is the Ludus, a heavy wooden practice sword, often twice the weight of its steel counterpart. The doctor demonstrates a simple stance, a basic strike. Then Scaeva must replicate it, again and again and again. Imagine the first few days of this training for Scaeva. His hands, accustomed to the smooth, worn wood of a plough handle, now struggle to grip the awkward, heavy Ludus. The repetitive motion of the swing is alien to him. After the first 100 strikes, his arms are a column of fire. After the first 1,000, his hands are raw, covered in bleeding blisters. But he cannot stop. The doctor stands nearby, his arms crossed, his expression a mask of bored indifference. To drop the sword, to even complain, would be to invite a punishment far worse than the pain he is already enduring. And so he continues, the blisters turning to calluses, the pain becoming a familiar, constant companion. He spends his days practicing against the parlus, a thick wooden stake driven into the ground. This inanimate post is his first opponent. He must learn to strike it with precision and power, to master the footwork, to keep his shield raised. He spends countless hours in this lonely, repetitive dance, the only sounds being the thud of his wooden sword against the post and the harsh, critical corrections of the trainer. "Lower! Your shield is too high. You'd be dead. Faster. A turtle moves faster than you. Again, until I tell you to stop." This is not about learning elegant swordsmanship. It is about forging muscle memory. It is about drilling a handful of lethal, efficient movements so deeply into his mind and body that he can execute them without thought, under conditions of extreme stress and terror. He is not being taught to be a swordsman. He is being programmed to be a killing machine. The discipline is absolute and enforced with casual brutality. A moment of inattention, a sloppy parry, a flicker of defiance in his eyes, all are met with immediate physical correction. The whip is a constant presence, but there are other, more creative punishments. A man might be forced to hold a heavy shield above his head for an hour, his muscles trembling until he collapses. He might be deprived of his evening meal, the gnawing hunger, a sharp reminder of his failure. Injury is a constant threat. In this environment of exhaustion and violence, a misplaced step can lead to a twisted ankle, a clumsy parry to a broken finger. Sparring with the other novices, even with wooden weapons, is a dangerous affair. A blow to the head can cause a concussion. A hard strike to the ribs can leave a man breathless and bruised for days. There is little sympathy for such injuries. Unless a man is utterly incapacitated, he is expected to train through the pain. Weakness is a flaw in the product, and the Lanista has no tolerance for flawed products. Slowly, painfully, Scaeva begins to change. The farmer's soft physique hardens. The calluses on his hands become thick and tough. The awkward, hesitant movements are replaced by a new, dangerous economy of motion. He learns to read an opponent's posture, to anticipate a strike, to move with a balance and power he never knew he possessed. He is becoming stronger, faster, more skilled. But with every new layer of muscle, with every new fighting skill he acquires, he feels a piece of his old self, a piece of Marcus, chipping away. He is being successfully forged, but he knows, with a cold certainty, that the purpose of this forging is not for him to live, but for him to die in a more entertaining fashion. After weeks and months of this brutal, transformative process, the gladiator is finally deemed ready. He is no longer the clumsy novice, the raw material that was purchased in the market. He is now a finished product, a weapon, honed and sharpened, ready to be wielded. But he is a weapon that does not belong to himself. He belongs to the Lanista, and like any asset, his purpose is to generate a return on investment. The final stage of the gladiator's dehumanization is his entry into the cold, brutal calculus of the Roman entertainment industry. The business model of the Ludus was not unlike that of a modern sports franchise, but with a far more lethal set of stakes. The Lanista, the owner, maintained his family of gladiators, his familia gladiatoria. He fed them, housed them, and trained them, all at considerable expense. His profit came from renting them out to an editor, the organizer and sponsor of a set of games. This editor could be a wealthy magistrate, a high-ranking politician, or even the emperor himself, looking to curry favor with the public by staging a magnificent spectacle. Imagine the scene. An editor from a nearby city arrives at the Ludus. He is planning a series of games to celebrate a military victory or a religious festival. He needs to hire fighters. The Lanista welcomes him, not as a friend, but as a valued client. Then begins a process that is, in essence, a human catalogue shopping experience. The gladiators, including Scaeva, are brought out into the courtyard. They are ordered to strip, their bodies once again put on display. But this time, they are not the wretched, wounded captives of the slave market. They are powerful, scarred fighting men. The editor walks among them, accompanied by the Lanista, who acts as a salesman, extolling the virtues of his merchandise. "Look at this one," the Lanista might say, slapping the muscular back of a Thracian. "Fearless, a true crowd pleaser. He'll give you a good show." He might point to Scaeva. "And this one, the Gaul, Scaeva, a left-hander. The crowds love that. It's unorthodox, makes for an interesting fight against a standard swordsman. He's new, but he's strong. The editor examines them with a critical eye. He is not just looking for skill, he is looking for a good narrative. He might choose to pair a large, heavily armored murmillo against a swift, lightly armored retiarius, creating a classic matchup of power versus speed. He might choose two gladiators of similar build for what he hopes will be a long, drawn-out duel of endurance. He is a casting director for a play where the final act is real death. A price is negotiated. The rental fee for a gladiator for a single set of games was enormous, but the contract had a crucial and horrifying clause. If the gladiator was killed in the arena, the editor was required to pay the Lanista his full replacement value, a sum that could be 50 times higher than the rental fee. This was the cold, hard logic of the business. A Lanista profited if his gladiator lived to fight another day, but he profited even more if his gladiator died. This financial incentive hung over every single fight, a quiet, unspoken death warrant. For Scaeva, this is the final confirmation of his status. He is an object. His life and death are line items in a business ledger. He watches the negotiation, a conversation that will decide his fate, and he has no voice, no say. He can only stand there, silent and powerless, as his flesh is assigned a price. Once the deal is struck, the chosen gladiators are prepared for transport. They are chained and loaded onto carts, their journey to the games beginning. As they travel through the countryside, they might be pelted with insults or refused by the very people who will later cheer for them in the arena. They are despised, feared, and yet desired as objects of entertainment. Scaeva looks out from the cart, the world he once knew passing by as a blur. He is no longer a man. He is a commodity, a piece of rented equipment whose sole purpose is to perform. He has been bought, branded, imprisoned, and forged. And now, he has been sold. He is on his way to the arena, a place where his only remaining task is to bleed beautifully for the profit of his master and the amusement of a crowd that is hungry for the spectacle of his death. The cage is locked, the stage is set, his bondage is complete. The day of the games arrives not with a sense of ceremony, but with a cold knot of dread in the pit of the stomach. For Scaeva, there is no stirring speech, no prayer to the gods for victory. There is only the rough scrape of a guard's key in his cell door and a harsh command to get out. He and the other gladiators chosen for the day's spectacle are led from their cells into the courtyard. Their bodies are oiled, a process that feels less like an honor and more like preparing a piece of meat for the butcher's block. They are then led into the armory, where they are fitted with the tools of their trade. For Scaeva, this means the heavy, curved shield of a murmillo and the short, brutally efficient sword known as the gladius. The bronze helmet, with its grated faceplate, is placed over his head. The world dissolves into a narrow, suffocating grid of metal. His vision is restricted, his hearing is muffled, and the sound of his own panicked breathing becomes a roar in his ears. The armor is not a comfort. It is a claustrophobic trap, a coffin he must wear while he is still alive. He feels its immense weight on his shoulders, a physical manifestation of the crushing weight on his soul. Then begins the pompa, the grand procession into the arena. To the 50,000 spectators who have packed the amphitheater, this is a moment of thrilling anticipation. They see a parade of gods, of magnificent hardened warriors. They roar their approval as the gladiators march onto the sun-drenched sand. But for Scaeva, this is a death march. He walks through the great arched entrance, and the scale of the place assaults his senses. He has never seen so many people in one place. The noise is a physical blow, a solid wall of sound that vibrates through the very bones of his skull. He looks up, not at the sky, but at the terrifying, endless sea of faces rising up on all sides. These are not fans. He does not see admiration in their eyes. He sees a hungry, predatory excitement. He sees a chilling eagerness for the violence that is to come. He understands in that moment that these people are not here to see him win. They are here to see him bleed. They are his judges, his jury, and his potential executioners, and they are all strangers, their individual faces blurring into a single, monstrous entity that holds his life in its hands. The gladiators circle the arena, a formal, prescribed route. They pass the grand imperial box where the editor of the games, the man who has rented their bodies for the day, sits in comfort, shielded from the sun by a silk canopy. They are expected to raise their weapons in a salute. Tradition holds that they would cry, Ave Imperator, morituri te salutant. Hail Emperor, we who are about to die salute you. But this famous phrase was likely a rare, specific occurrence, not a standard greeting. The reality was likely a far more sullen, silent acknowledgement of their own impending doom. Even before this parade, their humanity had been put on display one last time. The night before the games, the gladiators were given the cena libera, the free dinner. It was not an act of kindness. It was a public relations event, a final chance for the ticket-buying public and the high-stakes gamblers to inspect the livestock up close. The men would be served a rich meal, a feast compared to their usual gruel, but it is hard to imagine any of them having an appetite. They would eat under the curious, probing stares of the public, who would comment on their physiques, assess their chances, and place their bets. Scaeva would have endured this, feeling the eyes of the crowd on him, knowing they were speculating on the manner of his death, on whether he would die well or die screaming. Now, on the sand, the Pompa concludes. The pairings for the day's fights are announced. Scaeva learns who he will face. He might see the man standing across the arena, a fellow prisoner with whom he has shared meals and trained for weeks. There is no feeling of rivalry, only a shared, hollow sense of dread. The gates to the waiting cells are opened and the first performers of the day are ushered out. The show is about to begin. But the main event, the gladiatorial duels, must wait. First, the sand must be warmed. It must be prepared with an opening act of blood and terror. The moment arrives. The heavy grate of Scaeva's cell scrapes open. He is led up a dark, sloping ramp, the roar of the crowd growing louder, more immediate, until he steps out of the shadows and into the blinding, disorienting light of the arena. The heat hits him like a physical blow. The sand, which looked so clean and golden from a distance, he now sees is flecked with dark, damp patches from the morning's carnage. The sheer, overwhelming reality of the moment threatens to paralyze him. 50,000 pairs of eyes are on him. There is nowhere to hide. His first experience of combat is not the romantic one-on-one duel of legend. The editor has decreed a prelusio, a preliminary fight to begin the afternoon, featuring a group of new or less distinguished gladiators. It is a mass brawl, a chaotic and terrifying melee. Scaeva finds himself on the sand with a dozen other men, a mixture of different fighting types, all thrown together in a desperate, swirling battle for survival. This is not a place of honor or strategy. It is a maelstrom of violence. The carefully practiced stances and strikes he learned against the Palus are almost useless here. He is fighting not one opponent, but a constantly shifting threat. He parries a blow from a Thracian on his left, only to have to duck a net cast by a Retiarius on his right. The air is filled with the desperate, ragged breathing of men, the grunt of effort, the sickening thud of a shield against a helmet. The fight is a blur of confusion and terror. He sees a man go down, his leg broken by a blow from a heavy mace. No one stops to help him. He is simply trampled underfoot as the brawl moves on. Scaeva's world narrows to a tiny circle of survival. His senses are on fire. He is aware of everything and nothing at once. He feels the jarring shock travel up his arm as his shield absorbs a powerful blow. He smells the acrid stench of his own sweat. He sees the wild, terrified eyes of another man through the bars of his helmet, a mirror of his own fear. His training, the endless, repetitive drills, takes over. His body moves without conscious thought. He blocks. He thrusts. He keeps his feet moving, his shield always between him and the nearest threat. He is no longer Marcus the farmer. He is not even Scaeva, the branded slave. He is a cornered animal, fighting with a primal instinct to live for one more second, and then one more after that. He lunges forward, his short sword finding a gap in another man's defense. He feels the blade sink into the soft flesh of a thigh. The man screams, a high-pitched, desperate sound, and collapses. Scaeva feels a jolt of nausea, of revulsion, but there is no time for it. Another fighter is upon him, and he must turn to defend himself, leaving the wounded man to his fate. This is the brutal reality of combat, far removed from the clean choreography of myth. It is clumsy, ugly, and deeply personal. There is no glory here, only the desperate, scrambling need to stay alive. The crowd roars its approval, their excitement rising with every wound, every fall. They are not appreciating skill. They are savoring the spectacle of human bodies being broken and torn. Eventually, the brawl thins out. Some men are dead, others too wounded to continue. The referee, the Summa Rudis, steps in and calls a halt. Scaeva is still standing. He is breathing in ragged, painful gasps. His body is bruised and aching, a thin line of blood trickling from a shallow cut on his arm. But he is alive. He has survived his first taste of the sand. He is herded off the arena floor, his place taken by the next set of fighters. He is given a brief respite, a chance to drink some water, to have his minor wound roughly cleaned. But there is no relief. He knows this was just the beginning. The main events, the scheduled one-on-one duels, are still to come. He has proven he can survive. And his reward for that survival is the promise of more fighting, more fear, and a greater chance of a death that is now no longer an abstract concept, but a horrifying, tangible possibility. The afternoon wears on, the sun beats down, and the sand of the arena floor becomes a furnace. Scaeva is called again. This time it is not a chaotic brawl. It is a scheduled duel, the kind of fight the posters in the city advertised. His opponent is a hoplomachus, a heavily armed fighter with a large shield, a spear, and a dagger. He is a veteran, his body a roadmap of scars, his movements slow but deliberate, radiating a weary confidence. The two men approach the center of the arena. The referee, the Summa Rudis, is there, a man in a white tunic carrying a long staff. His job is to ensure the fight follows the rules, to separate the fighters if they become locked together, and to interpret the will of the crowd. He is not here to ensure fairness. He is here to ensure a good show. The fight begins. It is a tense, probing affair. Scaeva, his heart hammering against his ribs, relies on his training. He remembers the hours against the palace, the endless drills. He uses his larger shield to deflect the probing thrusts of his opponent's spear. The crowd is quieter now, more focused. They are watching the tactical play, the dance of offense and defense. For several minutes, the two men are locked in a stalemate. Scaeva is faster, but his opponent is more experienced, more patient. The veteran conserves his energy, letting Scaeva wear himself out against his shield. The heat is suffocating inside the helmet. Sweat pours into Scaeva's eyes, stinging them. His arm holding the heavy shield feels like lead. His breath comes in ragged, desperate gulps. Then he makes a mistake. In a moment of frustration, he overcommits to a thrust. He lunges forward, leaving himself slightly off balance for a split second. It is all the veteran needs. The hoplomachus sidesteps with a speed that belies his size and thrusts his spear low. Scaeva feels a blinding, searing pain in his thigh. He looks down and sees the spearhead protruding from the muscle, blood already soaking the sand around his feet. He cries out, a sound that is a mixture of shock and agony, and collapses to one knee. The crowd erupts. This is the moment they have been waiting for. The turning point, the sight of blood, the imminent prospect of a kill. The veteran stands over him, his spear raised, ready for the final blow. But the fight is not over. The rules of the games in this period allow for a plea for mercy. Scaeva, his leg a column of fire, knows what he must do. It is the ultimate humiliation, an admission of defeat, but it is his only chance. He drops his sword and his shield. He raises his left hand, extending his index finger, the traditional gesture of surrender, of appeal. Missio. Release. His fate now leaves his own hands entirely. It is no longer a matter of his strength or skill. He is a supplicant, a beggar pleading for his life. The referee steps forward, looking not at the fighters, but up at the editor of the games, the man in the grand box. The editor, in turn, looks to the crowd. He is a politician, a showman. His decision will be guided by their mood. Scaeva, on his knees, looks up at the 50,000 faces. He cannot see them clearly, but he can feel their collective will. He hears a cacophony of shouts. Some are yelling for him to be spared. Perhaps he fought well. Perhaps they have a bet on him surviving. But many more are screaming for his death. They make a gesture with their thumbs, the infamous police verso. We imagine it as a simple thumbs down, but its exact form is lost to history. It may have been a thumb pointed to the throat, a gesture for stabbing, or simply a downward jab. But its meaning is clear. Kill him. Scaeva's blood runs cold. He sees men and women smiling, laughing as they scream for his execution. For them, this is the peak of the entertainment. His life hangs in this perfect, terrible balance. He watches the editor, waiting for the final sign. for the gesture that will either allow him to live or command the veteran standing over him to drive a sword into his throat. In this moment, he is the most powerless man on earth, his very existence subject to the whim of a mob. The moment stretches into an eternity. The roar of the 50,000 spectators is a chaotic symphony of life and death. Scaeva remains on his knees, his blood pooling in the sand, his eyes fixed on the distant figure of the editor. The showman holds the silence for a moment longer, savoring his power, before finally making his gesture. He spares him. Perhaps Scaeva is new, and the Lanista does not want to lose his investment so soon. Perhaps he fought with a pleasing ferocity. Perhaps it is simply an arbitrary whim. The reason does not matter. The crowd groans in disappointment, denied their kill, but the decision is made. The veteran lowers his spear, gives Scaeva a curt, almost imperceptible nod, and walks away. Guards enter the arena and roughly haul Scaeva to his feet. He is dragged away, his wounded leg trailing uselessly behind him, leaving a smeared red trail on the sand. He is taken back to the Casa, to the grim infirmary, where a surgeon will probe his wound with unsterilized tools. A new form of agony that he must now endure. He has survived. But as he lies on a dirty pallet, the pain in his leg a throbbing, relentless fire, he knows this is not a victory. It is merely a postponement. He does not have to wait long for a reminder of the fate he so narrowly escaped. From the infirmary, he can still hear the sounds of the arena as the next duel begins. He hears the clash of steel, the roar of the crowd reaching another crescendo. Then he hears a final, choked-off cry, followed by a thunderous, unified cheer. This time, there was no mercy. A few minutes later, he hears a commotion outside in the corridors. He can see through the open doorway as the arena slaves go about their grim work. The loser of the last fight is brought past. But first comes a figure who haunts the nightmares of every gladiator. It is a man dressed as Charon, the mythical ferryman of the underworld. He carries a large, heavy mallet. His purpose is symbolic, to ensure the man is truly dead, and to add a final cruel piece of theatre to the proceedings. He brings the mallet down on the head of the fallen gladiator with a sickening, wet crunch. Then comes another figure, this one dressed as the god Mercury, who was tasked with guiding souls to the afterlife. He carries a long metal rod, a caduceus, which has been heated in a brazier until its tip glows red hot. He touches the hot iron to the flesh of the dead man. The skin sizzles, and the smell of burnt flesh once again fills the air. This is the final test. If the man did not react, he was truly dead. Once the man is officially declared deceased, the final indignity begins. Two hulking slaves emerge from the shadows. They are not carrying a stretcher. They are carrying long iron hooks. They sink these sharp hooks into the heels of the dead man's body, and then they begin to drag him. Scaeva watches in horror as the body is pulled across the stone floor, bouncing and scraping, his head lolling, his arms dragging behind. This is the fate of the loser. There is no respectful ceremony, no honorable burial. He is treated like a carcass in a slaughterhouse. The slaves drag the body towards a specific, dreaded exit from the amphitheater. It is a dark, low-arched tunnel known as the Porta Libitinaria, the Gate of Death, named after the Roman goddess of funerals and burial. This is the gate through which all the dead, both animal and human, are unceremoniously removed from the arena. The body disappears into its shadows, on its way to a mass grave, to be forgotten forever. Scaeva lies on his pallet, the pain from his own wound now a distant, secondary sensation. His mind is filled with what he has just witnessed. He now understands the full truth of his profession. He understands that his survival was a fluke, a momentary diversion in a machine designed for death. He has been spared today, but he knows, with a chilling certainty, that one day it will be him. One day, he will be the one whose pleas for mercy are ignored. He will be the one to feel the final blow, to be tested by the hot iron of Mercury, and to be dragged by hooks through the dark, waiting more of the gate of death. His life has been given back to him, but it is a gift that feels like a curse, for he now knows exactly what he has been saved for. Having survived the arena, Scaeva is returned to the Ludus. His wound is crudely stitched. His body is a landscape of aches and bruises. But the physical pain, as intense as it is not the deepest wound he carries. He has looked into the heart of the machine and seen its gears. He has felt the judgment of the crowd and understood his own powerlessness. He has witnessed the final, undignified exit through the gate of death. This knowledge now lives inside him, a cold and permanent passenger in his soul. In the days and weeks that follow, as his body slowly mends, he finds himself navigating a new and treacherous landscape, the complex social world of the familiar gladiatoria. He had expected a world of brutal rivalry, of every man for himself, a pack of wolves trapped in a cage. And while that was true on the training grounds, in the quiet hours after the trainers had left, in the shared misery of the cells, something else began to emerge. Something that felt dangerously like humanity. Stripped of their names, their families and their pasts, the men of the Ludus had only each other. They were a collection of broken souls from every corner of the known world. There were Gauls like himself, Germans with eyes as pale as a winter sky, swarthy Syrians, and powerful Africans. They were a forced brotherhood, united not by blood or belief, but by a shared grim fate. In hushed tones, in the darkness of the barracks, they would trade stories, not of war or glory, but of the lives they had lost. A man might speak of the taste of the wine from his village. Another might describe the face of the daughter he would never see grow up. Scaeva, who had buried his own past deep inside him, found himself listening, recognizing the shape of his own grief in the voices of these strangers. It is here that he meets a man named Crixus, a fellow Gaul, but from a different tribe, captured in a different battle. Crixus is a veteran of 3 fights, a quiet, powerful man who carries his scars with a sort of weary resignation. He sees the raw terror in Scaeva's eyes, the untamed anger of a man still new to the cage. And for reasons Scaeva cannot understand, Crixus offers a small, unspoken kindness. He shows Scaeva how to better wrap the leather straps on his training shield to protect his knuckles. He gives him a quiet word of advice during drills, a subtle hint about an opponent's weakness that the trainers do not teach. These are small gestures, but in a world devoid of any kindness, they are a lifeline. A bond begins to form between them, a friendship forged in the crucible of shared suffering. They would often sit together during the evening meal, sharing their bland porridge in a comfortable silence. Crixus would tell Scaeva about the different arenas, about the quirks of certain fighting styles, about how to read a crowd. He was not just a trainer, he was a mentor in the art of survival. This brotherhood was the one thing the Lanista could not entirely control. He could own their bodies, command their actions, and profit from their deaths, but he could not fully extinguish the fundamental human need for connection. The men would look out for each other. They would share scraps of scavenged food. They would help a comrade dress a wound. They formed small informal burial societies, pooling their meager earnings to ensure that if a man died, his body might be given a slightly more dignified end than being dragged out by hooks. These bonds were a necessary psychological shield against the crushing despair of their existence. A shared glance of understanding across the training yard, a quiet nod of encouragement before a fight, the simple knowledge that someone else in this living hell knew your real name. These were the things that kept a man from completely losing his mind. It was a fragile, flickering candle in an endless, oppressive darkness. Scaeva, for the first time since his capture, feels a sliver of something other than fear or rage. In his friendship with Crixus, he finds a small anchor in a sea of madness. It is a dangerous feeling, this flicker of hope, this warmth of camaraderie. It makes the cold walls of the Ludus seem, for a few moments at a time, almost bearable. He begins to see the other men not as rivals or obstacles, but as fellow sufferers, each with his own ghosts, each fighting his own private war against despair. This brotherhood of the damned becomes his new tribe, his new family, and he makes the fatal mistake of believing it can save him. The fragile peace that Scaeva has found in his friendship with Crixus is a warmth that makes the surrounding chill seem even colder. Their bond deepens with each passing week. They train together, their movements becoming a familiar dance. Scaeva's left-handed style, once a clumsy liability, becomes a formidable asset under Crixus's tutelage. Crixus, in turn, finds in Scaeva a reminder of the man he was before the arena had ground down his spirit. Their friendship is a small, protected island in an ocean of brutality. But they both know, in a deep, unspoken part of their souls, that the tide is always rising. The day it comes is like any other. The morning drills are as punishing as ever, the midday meal as bland. In the afternoon, the Lanista gathers the gladiators in the courtyard. The editor for the upcoming games in a nearby town has made his final selections. A list is read out. Scaeva hears his name called, and then he hears the name of his opponent, Crixus. A profound, deathly silence falls between them. The other gladiators, who had witnessed their friendship, look away, their own faces etched with a mixture of pity and grim understanding. The world seems to tilt on its axis. Crixus, his mentor, his brother in this wretched existence, the one man who knew his real name was Marcus, is now the man he is contracted to kill. The Lanista is not a fool. He knows of their bond. In fact, it is why he has arranged this pairing. The crowds love a story. And what better story than that of two friends, two brothers in arms, forced to fight to the death? It is a narrative rich with pathos, with tragedy, with the kind of high drama that makes for a memorable and profitable show. Their friendship, once a source of private comfort, has been spotted, assessed, and weaponized for public consumption. It has been turned into another asset to be sold. In the days leading up to the fight, the Ludus becomes a psychological torture chamber. They are no longer allowed to train together. They are separated, their every interaction now monitored. The easy camaraderie is gone, replaced by a thick, suffocating wall of silence. When their eyes meet across the yard, they look away instantly, as if the gaze itself is a betrayal. How can you prepare to kill the only friend you have in the world? Every training session becomes a form of self-torment. As Scaeva practices his strikes against the wooden post, he sees Crixus's face. Every defensive move he masters is a move he knows he will have to use to deflect a blow from a man he respects. His own growing skill, once a source of pride, now feels like a curse, a tool he is sharpening for a monstrous purpose. The nights are the worst. Sleep offers no escape. Scaeva lies on his straw pallet, staring into the darkness, his mind a battlefield of impossible choices. Does he fight to win, to survive, and live with the ghost of his friend for the rest of his short life? Does he refuse to fight, an act of defiance that would result in his own immediate and likely torturous execution by the guards? Or does he allow himself to be killed, to grant his friend's survival, an act of sacrifice in a world that has taught him only selfishness? He knows Crixus is lying in his own cell, just a few feet away, wrestling with the same demons. The silence from the other cell is a weight, a testament to their shared, private agony. They are completely alone, yet inextricably bound together in this terrible fate. The system has found the one thing that gave him strength, his bond with another human being, and has perverted it into the ultimate instrument of his psychological destruction. Their friendship is now a poison. The memories of shared stories and quiet advice are no longer a comfort. They are ghosts that mock him. The Brotherhood of the Damned is revealed for what it truly is, a temporary alliance, always subject to the whims of the men who owned them. The system ensures that no loyalty can ever be greater than the primal, desperate need to survive. It pits slave against slave, friend against friend, ensuring that even in their hearts, they can never truly be united against their masters. The Lanista does not need to use a whip to break Scaeva's spirit now. He has found a far more effective tool, the memory of a poisoned friendship. The day of the fight arrives. Scaeva and Crixus are led from their cells. They do not look at each other. There are no words left to say. They are fitted with their armor, the weight of the bronze and leather feeling heavier than ever before. They march in the pompa, their faces hidden behind their helmets, two ghosts walking side by side in a parade celebrating their mutual destruction. They stand on the sand. The crowd roars, their excitement fueled by the lurid story the editor has spread about the two friends forced to fight. The referee gives the signal. The fight begins. It is a hesitant, sorrowful affair. Their movements are stiff, reluctant. Every parry, every block feels like an apology. They both know each other's moves, each other's feints, each other's weaknesses. It is like fighting a mirror, a dark reflection of oneself. The crowd, sensing the lack of bloodlust, begins to grow restless. They jeer, they whistle, they scream for action. The Lanista, watching from the side, gives a sharp, almost imperceptible nod to the referee. The message is clear. End this. Give them a show. The referee steps in, striking the ground with his staff, shouting at them to fight in earnest. The threat is unspoken, but understood. If they do not give the crowd what it wants, they will both be punished. Their deaths assured regardless of the outcome. The illusion of choice is gone. They are actors on a stage, and they must perform their tragic final act. With a shared look of grim resignation, they engage. The fight becomes real, driven by the terror of the alternative. It is a desperate, clumsy dance of survival. Scaeva, younger and faster, presses his attack. Crixus, older and wearier, defends with a practiced resilience. But Scaeva can see the exhaustion in his friend's eyes, the slight slowing of his shield arm. The will to live, that terrible primal instinct, begins to take over. In a flurry of movement, Scaeva sees an opening. It is a move Crixus himself taught him to look for. For a split second, he hesitates. Then, the face of the screaming crowd, the memory of the gate of death, the sheer, overwhelming terror of his own mortality, propels him forward. He thrusts his gladius forward. It slides past Crixus's shield and sinks deep into his side. Crixus lets out a sharp gasp, a sound of surprise, more than pain. He stumbles backward, his sword falling from his grasp. He looks at Scaeva, his eyes wide, not with anger, but with a kind of sad understanding. He sinks to his knees, his hand pressed against the bleeding wound. He has been defeated. He raises a hand, not to appeal for his own life, but in a final, weary gesture of concession to his friend. The crowd is roaring for the kill. There will be no missio today. They have been promised a tragedy, and they will have it. The editor gives the signal. Scaeva stands over his friend, his sword trembling in his hand. Crixus looks up at him and whispers a single word in their native Gallic tongue, a word no one else in the arena can understand. Live. Scaeva closes his eyes. He is no longer Scaeva, the gladiator. He is Marcus, the farmer, killing the only friend he has in this desolate world. He drives the sword home. The crowd erupts in a wave of triumphant ecstasy. Scaeva has won. He is the victor. But as he stands there, the blood of his friend cooling on his blade, he feels nothing but a vast, hollow emptiness. He has done what the system required. He has killed his own humanity to preserve his own life. He is led from the arena, his victory leaving the taste of ash in his mouth. That night, back in his cell, the ghost arrives. It is the ghost of Crixus. It is not a vengeful spirit. It is a memory. Scaeva sees his friend's final look, hears his final word, over and over again. He has survived, but the part of him that was capable of friendship, of trust, of hope, died on the sand today. He is now truly alone, haunted by the spectre of the man he was forced to kill. This is the true wound, the one no surgeon can stitch, the one that will never heal. He is a victor who has lost everything. In the grim economy of the arena, survival breeds reputation. The man who does not die becomes, by default, a success. Scaeva, now haunted by the ghost of Crixus, fights with a new, terrifying detachment. Having already killed the part of himself that cared, he becomes a more efficient, more brutal machine. He wins, and then he wins again. His name, once a simple label, begins to be chanted by the crowds. He is no longer just Scaeva, the left-handed. He is Scaeva, the victor. He becomes famous. His fighting style is discussed by gamblers. His image, a crude sketch of a man with a shield and sword, is scratched into the walls of taverns. He is moved from the cramped communal cells to a slightly larger private one, a meager reward for the fortune he is now earning for his Lanista. He receives better food, a small share of the prize money, enough to buy a few comforts. On the surface, it seems his life has improved. He has climbed the brutal ladder of his profession, but he soon learns that fame is not a shield. It is a spotlight, and it makes the cage he is in smaller, not larger. His fame makes him a more valuable commodity. The rental price for his services skyrockets. He is now in high demand, sent to the most prestigious games, pitted against the most dangerous opponents. Every fight is now a main event, the stakes higher, the expectation for a bloody show more intense. The slim chance of facing an inexperienced opponent vanishes. His life is now a series of high-stakes duels against other desperate, accomplished killers. His success has not brought him closer to safety. It has cornered him in a world where every opponent is as deadly as the last. This new status brings with it a new and bizarre form of violation. He becomes an object of morbid fascination and perverse desire, particularly for the Roman elite. The gladiator, the ultimate symbol of masculine power and imminent death, becomes a powerful, taboo aphrodisiac. Scaeva learns that his very body is being sold in pieces, even outside the arena. After a fight, an attendant will approach him not with a water skin, but with a strigil, a curved metal scraper. This man is not there to clean him, but to scrape the sweat and grime from his skin. This mixture is then bottled and sold in tiny, expensive vials to wealthy Roman matrons who believe it to be a potent face cream and a powerful aphrodisiac. The essence of his exhaustion and fear is a luxury cosmetic. His servitude takes on a new, more intimate form. On some nights, he is not locked in his cell. He is cleaned, perfumed, and led by guards to a lavish villa on the edge of the city. He is brought to the private chambers of a noblewoman, the wife of a senator or a wealthy merchant. He is to be her sex slave for the night. There is no question of consent. He is property, and his body is being rented for a different kind of performance. Imagine the profound psychological dissonance of this experience. He stands in a room of silk pillows and fine mosaics, his scarred, brutalized body a stark contrast to the opulence around him. The woman who uses him for her pleasure might be the same woman who, just that afternoon, was screaming for his death in the arena. She treats him not as a man, but as a thrilling, dangerous pet, a plaything. She might touch his scars with a mixture of revulsion and excitement. This is not an act of intimacy. It is the ultimate act of objectification. It is a stark reminder that every part of him, his strength, his fear, his sweat, his seed, is a commodity to be bought, used, and sold for the pleasure and profit of the elite who own him. This adoration is a far more insidious cage than the stone walls of the Ludus. It strips him of his final refuge, his own self. In the arena, he is a symbol of death. In the bedroom, he is a symbol of sex. In both, he is a thing, a fantasy, his own humanity completely erased. His fame has not made him a person. It has simply made him a more famous object, a more valuable slave. The chants of the crowd, the desire of the noblewomen, the money-changing hands, all of it is just the rattling of a more ornate, more gilded, and more inescapable cage. In this world of endless, cyclical violence, where survival only guarantees a more dangerous future fight, there is one glimmer of hope that is whispered about in the darkness of the cells. It is the one dream that keeps some men from succumbing completely to despair. It is the dream of the Rudis. The Rudis is a simple wooden sword, identical to the one they use for training. But when it is awarded to a gladiator by the editor in the arena, it is a symbol of something extraordinary, freedom. To be granted the Rudis is to be released from bondage, to be a rudiarius, a freed gladiator, his career over, his life finally his own. This dream is the ultimate motivation. It is the light at the end of a long, dark, bloody tunnel. A man might endure 12 fights, 100 wounds, 1,000 nights of terror, all for the slim, almost impossible chance of one day holding that simple piece of wood. It represents an end to the fear, an end to the killing, an end to the cage. As the years pass, Scaeva sees it happen, but only once or twice. He sees an old, legendary gladiator, a man who has survived for a decade against all odds, finally awarded the Rudis after a particularly spectacular fight. He sees the man fall to his knees, weeping, clutching the wooden sword to his chest as if it were a god. He sees him walk out of the arena, not through the gate of death, but through the gate of triumph, a free man. This rare, powerful image is enough to keep the myth alive, to fuel the desperate hope in the hearts of all the others. But as Scaeva endures, as he survives season after season, he begins to see the truth behind the dream. He begins to understand that the Rudis is the system's most sophisticated lie, its most brilliant piece of psychological control. He learns that the promise of the Rudis is what keeps the gladiators fighting. It gives them a reason to provide a good show, to demonstrate skill and courage, rather than just giving up. It is a tool for the Lanista, a way to motivate his assets and protect his long-term investments. But it is a promise that is rarely kept. For every one man who is freed, 100 die on the sand. The odds are astronomically poor. It is a lottery where the prize is life, and almost every ticket is a loser. Even for the one who wins, Scaeva comes to see that freedom is an illusion. He hears stories of the men who have left. What does a freed gladiator do in the Roman world? He is a man in his 30s or 40s, his body broken and scarred. He has no skills beyond the art of killing. He is often illiterate, with no family, no land, and no trade. He is marked by his past, instantly recognizable as a former gladiator, an object of fear and contempt in respectable society. Some try to find work as bodyguards or as trainers in the very ludi they once called their prison. They trade one cage for another, unable to escape the orbit of the world that created them. Others, given a purse of gold with their freedom, quickly squander it, having no knowledge of how to manage money or live a normal life. They end up broke, desperate, and with no way to earn a living. One evening, Scaeva sees a new recruit being brought into the Ludus, a man with a familiar, haunted look in his eyes. He learns that this man was a notorious, a freedman who had tried to make a life outside for 2 years and failed. He has voluntarily returned to the Ludus and signed a new contract, trading his terrifying, lonely freedom for the brutal certainty of the cage. He has come home. This is the moment Scaeva finally understands the full, perfect horror of his situation. The wound to his soul is absolute. The system has been designed so that there is no escape. The physical cage of the Ludus is mirrored by the psychological cage of his training. If he dies, he loses. But if he wins, if he survives long enough to be granted his freedom, he also loses. He has been so fundamentally remade, so institutionalized by violence, that he is no longer fit for the world of men. The Rudis is not a key that opens the door to freedom. It is a final, cruel joke. It is a symbol of a life that can never be reclaimed. It is a piece of wood that proves only one thing. Even if you survive the arena will never truly let you go. The soul of the gladiator is wounded by fear and trauma, but the battlefield that is his body is under a different, more constant form of assault. It is a war waged not with swords and shields, but with hunger, filth, and the gnawing agony of a body pushed beyond its limits and then left to fester. The myth of the gladiator shows us a man at the peak of physical perfection, a living sculpture of lean muscle. The reality, as with everything else in his existence, is a far more cynical and brutal story. And this story begins with the very fuel he is given to survive, his daily meal. Imagine the evening meal in the Ludus. The gladiators, exhausted and aching from a day of brutal training, line up to receive their portion. There is no camaraderie here, no breaking of bread. There is only a grim, silent ritual of refueling. A ladle is dipped into a large, steaming vat, and a thick, grey, unappetizing mush is slopped into a rough earthenware bowl. This is the sagina, the famous gladiator's mash. For Scaeva, every meal is a reminder of his status. At his farm in Gaul, food was a thing of flavour and texture. The crust of a freshly baked loaf, the sweetness of summer berries, the rich taste of roasted meat after a hunt. It was a thing of community, shared with his family around a warm fire. Here, food is an instrument of control, utterly devoid of joy. The sagina is a dense, joyless porridge made primarily from barley and fava beans. It is bland, heavy, and monotonous. He eats it day after day, week after week, month after month. The taste never changes. It is the taste of survival, and it is the taste of his bondage. But the purpose of this diet is the most cynical truth of all. A modern athlete eats to build lean muscle, to optimize speed and agility. The Lanista has a different goal. The high-carbohydrate, low-fat diet of the Gladiator is designed to do something specific, to create a thick layer of subcutaneous fat over the muscle. The Gladiator is being deliberately fattened up. This is not for his health or his comfort. It is for the show. A lean, muscular man who receives a cut in the arena might have a vital artery or organ severed immediately, ending the fight too quickly. This is poor entertainment. A fatter gladiator, however, can absorb shallow cuts to this layer of fat. These wounds are not immediately lethal, but they bleed spectacularly. The layer of fat protects the underlying muscles and organs from a glancing blow, allowing the fight to continue for longer, becoming a bloodier, more dramatic, and therefore more satisfying spectacle for the crowd. Scaeva, as he forces down another mouthful of the tasteless gruel, understands this with a chilling clarity. He is being fed not to be a better fighter, but to be a better victim. His diet is engineered to make him suffer more beautifully. He is being conditioned to bleed in a more entertaining fashion. Every meal is a quiet preparation for his own spectacular wounding. This layer of flesh he is forced to build is not a shield for his own protection. It is a canvas upon which the story of his violent death will be painted for the delight of 50,000 strangers. The diet is also profoundly unhealthy. Lacking in essential vitamins and variety, it leads to a host of physical ailments. The men are often sluggish, their bodies heavy and bloated. They suffer from digestive problems, their systems struggling to process the same coarse food day after day. Yet, they must perform as elite athletes. It is a paradox that wears down the body from the inside out. They are expected to have the stamina of a marathon runner while being fed like fattened livestock. As Scaeva scrapes the last of the mash from his bowl, the gnawing emptiness in his stomach is replaced by a heavy, leaden feeling. It is the weight of the food and the weight of the knowledge of its true purpose. His own body is not his. It is a tool being meticulously prepared for the arena, its very composition manipulated to ensure that his pain and his bleeding will be as theatrical as possible. The war on his body is not just fought with whips and wooden swords. It is fought with every single joyless, calculated mouthful he is forced to consume. The assault on the gladiator's body continues long after the evening meal is over. He retreats from the training yard not to a place of rest and recovery, but to a cell that is its own form of slow, grinding torture. The daily discomfort of life in the Ludus is a constant, wearing affliction, a war fought against filth, stench, and the complete absence of peace. Let us follow Scaeva back to his cell after a long day. He does not walk into a private room. He enters a long stone barracks, a chamber he shares with 20 other men. The air hits him first. It is a thick, almost tangible miasma, a foul cocktail of odors. There is the sharp, acrid smell of stale sweat clinging to unwashed bodies and damp straw. Beneath that is the sour smell of sickness, of men nursing infected wounds or fighting off fevers. And underpinning it all is the faint but ever-present stench of human waste from the overflowing latrine pits located just outside. This is the air he breathes, day and night. It is the smell of his life. He navigates to his assigned space. It is not a bed. It is a stone bunk, hard and cold, covered with a thin, lumpy pallet of straw. This straw is rarely changed. It is his mattress, his chair, and his only comfort. It is also a thriving ecosystem for fleas, lice, and other biting insects. Sleep is a nightly battle against their persistent, itching bites. Scaeva often wakes in the morning, not rested, but covered in a fresh constellation of red, angry welts, a misery he must endure in stoic silence. There is no privacy here. The cells are open to each other or separated only by iron grates. Every cough, every groan of a man in pain, every cry from a man lost in a nightmare echoes through the chamber. A man's private agony becomes public property. The sound of a fellow gladiator vomiting from sickness in the corner, the quiet, desperate weeping of a new recruit who has not yet learned to suppress his fear. These are the lullabies of the Ludus. There is no moment of true silence, no escape from the collective suffering of the men around him. Sanitation is a concept that does not exist. A single stone basin of stagnant water might serve for the washing of dozens of men. The latrines are often little more than overflowing trenches, a breeding ground for flies and disease. The floor of the barracks itself is hard-packed earth or rough stone, slick with grime and spilled food. Vermin are a constant presence. Rats, bold and fearless, scuttle through the shadows, drawn by the smell of food and waste. They are another vector for disease, another small horror in a world made of them. Imagine Scaeva trying to find a moment of peace in this environment. He lies on his straw pallet, the stone cold beneath him, the air thick with stench. He can feel the crawling sensation of fleas on his skin. He can hear the man in the bunk next to him coughing, a deep, wet sound that speaks of a lung infection. He closes his eyes and tries to summon a memory of his farm, of a clean breeze blowing through an open field. But the memory is faint, a ghost from another life. It is drowned out by the immediate, overwhelming reality of his squalor. This is not the life of a warrior. It is the life of an animal in a filthy, overcrowded cage. The constant grinding discomfort, the lack of basic hygiene, the relentless assault on the senses, all of it serves a purpose. It is part of the dehumanizing process. It reinforces the gladiator's status as something less than human. A man who is forced to live in filth, to sleep in squalor, to breathe the air of decay, begins to internalize that worthlessness. His environment is a constant, physical reminder of his master's contempt for him. It is a way of breaking the body and the spirit simultaneously, ensuring that he sees himself not as a man, but as the beast he is being trained to be. If a gladiator survives the invisible enemies of disease, he must still contend with the visible, spectacular wounds of his trade. And for these, the Ludus provides a solution that is often as terrifying as the injury itself: the infirmary. This is the domain of the surgeon, a place smelling of wine vinegar, dried herbs, and the sharp metallic odor of fresh and old blood. While some gladiator schools were served by highly skilled physicians, the famous Dr. Galen himself began his career tending to gladiators. The treatment they provided, by modern standards, was a form of methodical torture. Let us return to Scaeva after his first duel, his thigh pierced by the veteran's spear. He is dragged from the arena not to a clean, sterile hospital, but to a small, dark room where other wounded men lie on pallets, their groans filling the air. He is laid out on a wooden table, its surface stained and scarred from countless other procedures. Two strong assistants hold him down, their grips like iron clamps on his shoulders and healthy leg. There is no anesthetic, no opium to dull the pain. He will feel everything. The surgeon, a man with a steady hand and a stomach for gore, examines the wound. The spearhead is still embedded in the muscle. It must come out. He takes a pair of forceps and tries to pull, but the metal is lodged against bone. The surgeon curses and takes up a different tool, a sharp curved knife. He begins to cut into Scaeva's flesh, widening the wound, slicing through muscle and tendon to free the embedded spearhead. Imagine this agony. It is a blinding, white-hot fire that eclipses the original wound. Scaeva bites down on a leather strap stuffed in his mouth, the scream he cannot release building in his chest until he feels his lungs will burst. Sweat pours from his body. The assistants press down harder as he instinctively tries to writhe away from the source of the pain. The surgeon works with a detached focus, his movements efficient, his mind concerned only with the mechanics of the problem, not the suffering of the man on his table. After what feels like an eternity, the spearhead is pulled free with a sickening, wet sucking sound. But the ordeal is not over. The wound is a gaping, bloody mess. It must be cleaned. The surgeon pours raw, cheap wine into the wound, the alcohol acting as a crude antiseptic. The stinging is so intense it feels like being branded all over again. He then takes a needle, thick as one used for sewing leather, and a thread made of animal sinew. He begins to stitch the wound closed. Scaeva feels every single puncture of the needle, every pull of the thread through his raw, protesting flesh. When it is finally over, the wound is packed with a poultice of herbs and covered with a piece of rough linen. Scaeva, now in a state of shock, his body trembling uncontrollably, is carried to a pallet. The immediate torture of the surgery is over, but now a new, slower battle begins. The fight against infection. The surgeon has removed the weapon, but he has also introduced a world of invisible enemies. His unsterilized hands, the dirty knife, the sinew thread, all have likely pushed bacteria deep into the wound. In the coming days, Scaeva lies in a feverish haze. He watches his leg with a terrified fascination. He prays not to see the telltale signs, the angry, red swelling, the yellow pus, the black lines of gangrene creeping up his skin. He knows what that means. If gangrene sets in, the only option is amputation. He has seen it before. A man held down, his limbs sawn off with a bone saw, the stump then cauterized with a red-hot piece of iron. Few survive the shock, the blood loss, or the massive infection that almost always follows such a procedure. So Scaeva lies on his pallet, fighting a silent war. He fights the fever that racks his body. He fights the throbbing, relentless pain in his leg. And most of all, he fights the terror of what is to come. He has survived the spear. He has survived the surgeon's knife. Now he must survive the surgeon's handiwork. The doctor's tent, the place of supposed healing, is revealed to be just another chamber in this vast theatre of pain. a place where survival is often just a prelude to a slower, more agonizing death. The human body is resilient. Against all odds, Scaeva's fever breaks. The wound in his thigh, though horribly painful, does not fester with the black creep of gangrene. He survives, but he does not emerge from the ordeal the same man. His body, once the simple functional tool of a farmer, is now something else entirely. It is a canvas, a living document, a chronicle of his suffering written in the language of scar tissue. In the quiet of his cell, he tends to himself. The wound, as it heals, pulls tight, leaving a thick, puckered and discolored scar that he will carry for the rest of his life. It is a permanent reminder of his failure in the arena and of his desperate, humiliating plea for mercy. It aches when the air is damp, a dull, throbbing ghost of the original pain. But this is only the newest entry in a growing ledger. His body is a roadmap of his new life. He looks at his hands. The soft pads of his farmer's fingers are gone, replaced by thick, hard calluses from the relentless grip of the wooden sword. His knuckles are gnarled and slightly misshapen from thousands of blows against the training post. These are the hands of a killer, forged in pain. He runs his fingers over his torso and arms. He can feel the thin, silvery lines of cuts that healed cleanly. He can also feel the lumpy, raised keloid scars from wounds that became infected and healed poorly. He has a jagged, star-shaped scar on his shoulder from a practice session where a studded net, thrown by a trainee retiarius, caught him and tore his flesh. Each mark is a memory, a story of a specific moment of violence, a record of a brush with death. And then there is the brand, the mark of ownership on his shoulder. It is the ugliest scar of all, a permanent symbol of his dehumanization. It is the mark that separates him forever from the world of free men. It is the first thing he sees when he looks at his own reflection in a basin of water, a constant reminder that he is not his own. His body does not belong to him. It belongs to the Lanista who bought it, and it is scarred by the insignia of that ownership. These scars are more than just physical blemishes. They are a source of profound psychological weight. In the Roman world, a citizen's body was supposed to be sacrosanct, whole and unblemished. Scaeva's body is a testament to his brokenness, his low status. Yet, in the perverse world of the arena, these same scars are a mark of experience, of survival. They are a source of morbid fascination for the crowds, a visible testament to his glorious career. The very things that mark him as a degraded slave in the eyes of the law mark him as a hero in the eyes of the mob. He is trapped in this paradox, his body a site of both shame and fame. He learns to live with the chronic pain. The leg that was wounded never feels quite right again. It is weaker, and the muscles ache with a deep, persistent throb. His back is in a constant state of low-level pain from the punishing drills and the awkward weight of the armor. His joints click and groan. He is a young man, but he has the body of an old one, a body that has been systematically broken down, patched up, and sent back into the fray. As he sits alone in the gloom of his cell, tracing the lines of his oldest and newest scars, Scaeva understands the truth of his existence. The battlefield is not just the sand of the arena. The battlefield is his own flesh. It is a war zone where every victory is temporary and every wound is a permanent defeat. His body is a living testament to his own brutalization, a chronicle written in pain, a story that will only end when there is no more flesh left to be scarred. And so, our long and bloody journey through the dust of the arena comes to its end. We have walked with Scaeva from the green fields of his past to the red sands of his present. We have stripped away the layers of myth, peeling back the gleaming armor of the hero to find the branded flesh of the slave beneath. Now, as the dust settles and the roar of the spectral crowd finally fades, let us stand for a moment and look upon the whole of this brutalized existence. A life defined not by glory, but by the meticulous, systematic stripping away of a man's humanity. Our story began not with a choice, but with the brutal finality of conquest and commerce. We witnessed the end of Marcus, the man, and the birth of Scaeva, the commodity. In the first chapter, The Branded Body, we saw how he was harvested from a battlefield, his life extinguished to become a spoil of war. We stood with him on the slave block, a piece of flesh to be prodded, appraised, and purchased. We felt the searing, unforgettable pain of the hot iron as it burned the mark of ownership into his skin, a permanent declaration that his body was no longer his own. We then followed him into the grim fortress of the Ludus, a prison of pain where he was housed in a squalid cell, fed a joyless gruel designed for slaughter, and subjected to the absolute authority of the Lanista and his trainers. We saw him forged into a killer, his farmer's hands reshaped by the punishing weight of the wooden sword, his spirit systematically broken by the whip. And we understood that he was, in the end, nothing more than a valuable piece of equipment, a commodity to be rented out. His life and death, a simple matter of contract and coin. From that cage of bondage, we followed him into an even more terrifying space, the theater of death. We walked with him in the Pompa, the parade of the damned, and saw the 50,000 faces of the crowd not as adoring fans, but as a single, monstrous entity hungry for his death. We learned that the myth of the clean, honorable duel was a lie, overshadowed by the chaotic butchery of mass brawls and the abject terror of the beast hunts. We knelt with him on the sand, wounded and bleeding, his life hanging on the whim of the crowd, a finger raised in a desperate plea for a mercy he did not receive. And we watched, through his horrified eyes, the grim rituals of the aftermath, the figure of Charon confirming a death, and the final, wretched indignity of a body being dragged by hooks through the gate of death, a piece of human refuse to be discarded and forgotten. Then we turned our gaze inward to the wounded soul and explored the scars that no one could see. We found the fragile solace of the brotherhood of the damned, the poisoned friendships that the system itself would turn into a source of torment, forcing friend to kill friend for the crowd's amusement. We felt the deep, unshakable trauma of killing, the survivor's guilt that haunted the lonely hours in the cell. We saw how fame, for the rare survivor like Scaeva, was not a reward, but another, more gilded cage. A burden that turned him into a sexual commodity, his body consumed both in the violence of the arena and the perverse desires of the elite. And finally, we confronted the system's most cruel deception, the lie of the rudies, the illusion of a freedom that was rarely granted, and, for the broken men who received it, often impossible to reclaim. And at last, we explored the intimate daily war fought upon the body as a battlefield. We tasted the sagina, the monotonous diet cynically designed to fatten a man for a more spectacular, bloodier wounding. We endured the squalor of the cell, the filth and the stench that invited the invisible enemies of disease to feast on bodies already weakened by exhaustion. We sat on the surgeon's table and felt the unanesthetized agony of having a wound stitched with a rough needle. And we looked upon Scaeva's own skin, a living chronicle of scars, a roadmap of pain, a permanent ledger of his own brutalization, where every mark told a story of survival that felt only like a prolonged defeat. When we assemble these pieces, the slave, the prisoner, the killer, the commodity, the psychological ruin, the broken body, the figure that emerges from the shadows of history is one of profound and terrible paradox. The gladiator was a man legally dead, a person without rights, classed alongside the most despised members of society. And yet, he was also a superstar, an icon of strength, an object of erotic desire, his name chanted by the very citizens who deemed him unfit to be one of them. He was held up as the ultimate symbol of Roman martial virtue, courage, discipline, contempt for death, while being a man who was forced to fight out of pure, abject terror. He was the most famous and the most powerless of men, a god on the sand and a thing in a cell. His entire existence was a monument to this impossible contradiction. To look upon the gladiator is to look into the dark heart of Rome itself. It is to see a society so obsessed with power, so desensitized to violence, and so masterful at organization, that it could turn human suffering into its most popular and profitable form of mass entertainment. The Colosseum was more than an architectural marvel. It was the ultimate expression of the Roman worldview. It was a place where the empire could display its boundless power by taking its captured enemies, its condemned criminals, and its unwanted slaves, and forcing them to ritually slaughter one another for the amusement of the public. The games were a powerful tool of social control, a spectacle of bread and circuses that distracted the masses, reinforced the social order, and demonstrated the fatal consequences of opposing Roman might. The glory of Rome, its art, its laws, its legions, all of it was built alongside this vast, efficient, and deeply pathological industry of death. The chasm between the myth and the man is the final, tragic truth. The myth gives us a hero who chooses his fate. The reality gives us a man like Scaeva, a man who had his fate brutally stolen from him. We have followed his journey from a life of freedom to a life of unimaginable bondage. We have seen him lose his name, his family, his body, and his soul. Whether he finally died on the sand, his plea for mercy denied, or whether he survived long enough to be cast aside as a broken, forgotten old man, his end was one of tragedy. He was a ghost long before he died, a man hollowed out by a world that celebrated his strength while systematically destroying his humanity. We leave Scaeva where we found him, a ghost in the arena, his story told in blood and sand. They called him invincible. They chanted his name. And then, like all the others, they forgot him. The sand never remembered, but his scars did.